Hello everyone, and welcome to my first impression video for Starfield. I'm your host, Colors Fade. That's right, the game came out last night, and for those of us who have the 5 days of early access version of the game, I decided I would sit down, spend a few hours with it, and report back to you all. So here is what I discovered in my first few hours of playing Bethesda's Starfield. The first thing to note about the game is that it's not No Man's Sky. If you follow my channel, you know that we have No Man's Sky Sundays around this channel. So I've been putting a lot of hours into that game. I'm very familiar with No Man's Sky and how it works. And I think a lot of people anticipated that Starfield would be Bethesda's version of No Man's Sky, and it's not that. Starfield is not a game that has a seamless world environment. There are load screens. Going from your ship to a planet exterior to an interior of a building is a lot like going from one cave to another in Skyrim or going from one building to another in Fallout 4. There are zones. It's how Bethesda makes their games. The difference here is that we're given one more zone than we've had before, and that is outer space, where space combat can take place. But even with space, it's not like the wide open worlds of some games where everything can be really seamless. It's not a seamless game. Really what you have is pockets of interest largely located around planetoid objects. This isn't a game like Elite Dangerous either, where you can just fly off in space in one direction and actually eventually get to your location. It just doesn't work like that. And nor would you really want to in this game. And the reason is because, like all Bethesda games, fast travel is integral to the experience because the game is built around the narrative and the story and quest. It's not about just wandering aimlessly along the landscape until you circumnavigate the globe. You can actually do that in No Man's Sky, but you wouldn't want to in Starfield. There's no reason to do it. So there is fast travel, and like a lot of other Bethesda games, I think it's actually going to be really integral to playing as you get further and further into the game. And I think when it comes to Starfield, I'm personally going to end up using fast travel more than I ever have in any other game. Those of you who've stuck around my channel for a long time know that when I tend to play games like Fallout 4 or Skyrim, I turn fast travel off. I'll even use a mod to turn it off. But Starfield is a different game in that respect, and you're going to want to spend your time using fast travel. I look at it this way when it comes to the seamlessness of the game, or the lack of seamlessness, and the fast travel thing. I think if Bethesda had made everything seamless, most players would have engaged in that seamless transition from interior to world to spaceship and back to the planet side, and they'd have done it a couple times, a handful of times maybe, and then they'd have started fast traveling, because that's where the focus of the game is. It's on the quests and objectives. So Bethesda, I think, wisely said, we're not going to invest huge amounts of development time and technology in a feature that most players are only going to engage in a couple of times or a handful of times, and then they're going to start skipping. They're going to start fast traveling. I think it was a smart decision on their part, but I also know that there are going to be players who are disappointed that this isn't some massive, seamless environment like Star Citizen has promised but will never deliver. Starfield just isn't that game. It's very much a classic Bethesda game. There's a main quest and loads of side quests and loads of NPCs to talk to and people to get quests from, and what you do and how you approach it will be entirely up to you. It's classic Bethesda single player RPG. You have your character and your character build, and you're going to customize your character, and you're going to customize your ship, and you're going to customize your gear, and you're going to customize your clothing. The exploration part of this game is exactly like other Bethesda titles. It's exactly like Skyrim and Fallout 4. It's about exploring points of interest. It's about discovering the next cave or investigating the next building. It's about landing on a planet or finding a settlement or going to a city and then meeting the locals and getting caught up in all the local drama and all the side quests. It's everything you've come to expect and love from Bethesda's games, but instead of taking place in a single land like Skyrim or a single city like Boston, it spans the cosmos, which is pretty darn cool. Graphically, it looks fantastic, except for a couple of caveats, which I'll get to. The environments here are top shelf. All of the interiors feel exactly right. They look and feel authentic and lived in. They look exactly how I'd imagined they would look if humanity found itself in the early years of space travel and space colonization. It's pretty damn amazing to me, actually, how good they did this. The lighting and the surface quality, the way everything is decorated, and the distribution of all those decorations when you're walking through a building and trying to sneak and find bad guys, just the sheer amount of stuff in there to make it look lived in, it's phenomenal. The lighting and all that stuff, the fog, and just the way it looks. This is the best looking Bethesda game I've ever played without any graphical mods. It's mind blowing that it's this good out of the gate. That said, there are two things that don't look as great, which kind of make for an uneven graphical experience in the game. The first is that the font they chose is complete ass, and I have no idea why they chose this font. I totally do not get it. It surprises the hell out of me. I made a joke on Twitter that if you're going to go with a font that looks this bad, you might as well just go all the way and use Comic Sans. I don't get it, because the whole game looks really good, and then you have this god-awful, ugly, primitive, just bad font on top of it. This is going to be the first mod that I will install in the game, is when somebody gives us a mod that gives us way better and way cleaner fonts than this. I understand that this font is supposed to convey like near future science fiction, but it doesn't. What it conveys is 18-bit graphics from 1993. It just looks terrible. The other thing that doesn't live up to the graphical quality of the entire game and its environments, and basically every inanimate object in the game looks fantastic, and what doesn't is the characters. Baldur's Gate 3, as somebody noted on Twitter, has better character models, and yet it's a top-down game played from a camera angle that is a lot farther away. It's stunning, really, that in 2023 we have character models that look like this. They have this weird, lifeless quality to them, and what I notice is it's all in the eyes. They all have the same wide open eyes with the exact same dilated pupils. They all look like they are cardboard cutouts. They look like animatronics that were taken off the shelf and then electrified, so they can move and they can speak, but there's no soul behind those eyes. We know from the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff, that the post-game interviews and all that stuff, that they motion captured everybody's performance in all of the cutscenes. And they did that because they wanted the characters to come to life, and it worked. The characters in Baldur's Gate 3 are amazing. And then we get this. We just get these very flat-looking characters that would have worked way back in 2000, but it's 23 years later. Technology has advanced. I kept thinking about even recent games that are actually starting to look old by now, games that are 7 years old. For instance, Assassin's Creed Origin has better character models than this game does. Bayek is an amazingly expressive and animated and fully rendered character. He looks fantastic, as do a lot of the characters in that game that you encounter. And that game was made in 2017. So you can't tell me that Bethesda couldn't have made these characters look a lot better. Why they look this way, I don't know. It's almost like it was an intentional design decision because they were worried that characters were looking too good, or we were getting too close to the uncanny valley. So for some reason, these characters just look very lifeless to me, or like they look fake, which I don't understand. It doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the game, but it does make me question, how the hell did we get here? Because characters have been getting better and better and better in every game since then, and especially Ubisoft. I mean, they've been nailing it. And then here comes Bethesda with this game, and it's like we took a step 10 years back in time. I don't quite get that. That said, the gunplay is the best it's ever been in any Bethesda game. The enemy animations especially are a really great addition and have helped Bethesda level things up a little bit. There's just a whole new quality to the gunfights. The responsiveness and reactions of the character models when you do things like shoot them in the face, along with the sound effects. It's all superior to anything they've done before. It's better than Fallout 76 by a mile. It's better than Fallout 4, and that's a game that I really enjoy playing. This is really cool how much better it's got. And also, to add on to that, the guns look freaking cool. The gun designs are really so much better than anything Bethesda has done previously. They don't look overly ridiculous, which can quickly happen in sci-fi games like this. I'm looking at you, Outer Worlds. Instead, they look like they belong with everything else in this game, at least in terms of things that are inanimate objects. That's really the great line of demarcation in this game. Everything in Starfield that is an inanimate object looks fantastic, and everything that's meant to look organic, or at least in terms of people, not so much. So it makes for kind of a little bit of an uneven graphical experience in the game. The vistas, the scenery, the buildings, everything inside the buildings, everything inside your starship looks fantastic. The character models, not so much. Aesthetically, artistically, this is a pretty darn gorgeous game. Like I said, it looks like how you would imagine it, from the interiors of your starships to the beautiful cities, and then the seedy underbellies and the muddy outposts. It all looks really well done. The artistic direction in this game deserves an A+. It probably deserves some kind of nod at the Game of Year awards, maybe even an award, except that font is still ass. The highest praise that I can give a game is usually when I say I'm going to sit down and play it for an hour, and then 3 hours or 4 hours just blow by, and I have no idea that amount of time transpired. And that's what happened here to me last night playing Starfield. I sat down and said I'm going to play for an hour, and then I had to work last night, and next thing I knew, 3 hours just ran by like nothing, like it was 20 minutes. This game, Starfield, has that quality that all great games have, and that all of Bethesda's best games have had, which is you just want to keep playing. You're like, I'm going to kill one more bad guy and loot his gear, or I want to open that one more chest, or I want to finish one more quest and then I'll go to bed. Or I'll talk to just one more NPC, and the next thing you know, you got 4 new quests. It's that kind of game. It has that quality that is sometimes difficult for us to define, but we have come to term it as, I'm just going to play one more turn. You know those games, the turn-based ones where like, I'm going to play one more turn, like the old Civilization games and stuff. We'd say, I'm going to play one more turn, and the next thing you know, it's 2 hours later, and one more turn turned into 10 more turns. And this game has that quality. I remember doing the same thing in Fallout 4. I'd be like, well, I'm just gonna do this one more quest. It seems like it's really small. I bet I can go in this building and loot this place, and I'll be done in 15 minutes. And the next thing you know, it's 4 hours later, and you're rescuing Nick. It's an amazing experience. So in that regard, Starfield is still doing what Bethesda has always been really good at doing. It's going to keep you playing. You're going to be engaged by the story. You're going to be engaged by the side quests. You're going to want to upgrade your character and upgrade your loot and upgrade your ship and grab the next gun and see what's around the corner. You're going to want to do all those things. And I think that's the best part of what it has going for it. Now, will that enthusiasm, will that one more turn aspect of it keep going throughout the duration of the game? That part I can't say yet. I'm very early into this thing, but so far it's making a very good first impression on me. Now, as for the downsides, other than, the font is ass, I'll say that as many times as I have to because it's awful, and the character models are kind of lifeless. The menu system and navigating the menus and navigating across space can be very cumbersome and aggravating, and the only reason it's that way is because the game had to be made for consoles. I know it's a pain in the ass to have a separate build for the mouse and keyboard for computer players, but I wish to God they would have done that with Starfield, because as you're playing it, it's so very clear that every single menu and system is made for a controller, and it's just cumbersome and awful. It's an awful game experience if you have a mouse and keyboard, because you're saying to yourself, this would just be so much easier. How come I can't just click on this thing with a mouse? It's just, it would be so much better if they would have had a UI specialist who just said, we're going to have a separate build for the PC, because it's just so much better that way. There's an amazing lack of options in the game for accessibility. There's fewer options graphically than I expected to be, and there's fewer options for keyboard shortcuts than I expected there to be. There's just not a lot there. That may get expanded to over time, but this game was just so clearly made for consoles. It's a bit of a disappointment in that regard. It could be so much easier to navigate were it not constrained by the stupid controller, but that's where it's at. Those are the only real big negatives so far that I've ran into. I know that for years, Bethesda has earned the name Bugthesda for good reason, for the games being so buggy. But so far, I've only really ran into one bug, and that was a character kind of stuck in the wall. And we had to circle around to shoot that person on the other side. They got trapped in this room when they shouldn't have been. They were out, they started in the hallway, they got stuck in the wall, and they ended up in this other room. But other than that, this has been the smoothest playing Bethesda game I have ever played. And for it to look this good with all the lighting and all the textures and all the environments, for it to look this good and play this smooth out of the box, I'm really impressed. So that's what I have, folks. First impressions of Starfield. I may be doing more on this later. If you want to see a Let's Play playthrough of it, be sure to make your voice heard on that, because I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put it on the channel or not. I'm also thinking about a video for helpful hints, because there are a couple of things I found playing it in the first few hours that I think would really help new users to it, new players to it. Other than that, that's all I got. So as usual, if you dig it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave your questions, comments down below. Consider supporting my channel and my Patreon. It's in the description below, and I will see you all next time. Until then, happy gaming, everyone.